Good morning. We start with our next topic of the syllabus, which is data storytelling. It's actually a very easy concept, but there are certain aspects of it which we need to just refer to, certain terms and terminologies. As such, the message being conveyed is a very, very simple concept as such. Okay. So I'm just sharing my screen so that I can pick up the presentation. So this is it. It is the data storytelling unit 8 of your syllabus. Okay. This is going to be part of your coming exam. So just go through it seriously so that you are able to pick it up in one go itself. Okay. So we are here talking about what exactly is storytelling, of course, the elements of a story, basic data storytelling. I'm not really talking about a movie that is also telling a story, but it is about the data uh, told in the form of a or conveyed. The message I want to convey through my data is through a story. Okay. What are the essential elements of that? The narrative structure, there's a specific uh, pyramid which we refer to. And then we have the various types of visualizations which we have to see and understand that which data will be or which place, what kind of data we want to portray, what kind of visualization tool will you be using. Okay. The various steps to create a story through a data. And of course, the ethics involved in that. Ethics comes in every aspect of your AI. So that's very, very important. You understand those things too. Now, we all know and we realize the importance of data in today's world, and it is basically that it's a pool of facts, right? It's a pool of facts which we have around us, and at times it is it is difficult to decipher what exactly we are trying to what exactly we are trying to uh, convey through that. Okay, it is difficult to see. There are different interpretations. If you see a data, there are different interpretations you may make out of that. Exact what you want to, what the company wants to convey to you, what is that picture wanting to convey to you? You may be wrong, you may be right, depending upon your perception, right? So when you talk about data trying to do its job, that it is supposed to convey me certain things. The main part is that when you are conveying data to your to the people around you, it should be engaging. What happens is these kind of things become very boring and monotonous, where the person loses interest in that. That okay, it's okay. I am not ready gaining any thing new. So what you have to do is that you have to project your data in a manner that it is able to bring about changes in their thoughts. They are able to think about it further, right? And it should be retained. The projection of the information or the data should be in such a format that it is retained. You have huge amounts of data. We scroll hundreds of screens and shots in a day, but how much do we retain? So it should be in a manner that you retain the maximum out of that, and you are able to think about it further. So it should be thought provoking. It should be engaging, of course, and it should be memorable. Okay, because then only the decision making will be as per what it should be. For proper changes, for benefit of the user, for benefit of the company, we need to have proper decision making being done, and that will only happen when the data on the basis of which you are taking the decision is understood well, is researched well, and is leading to further what do you call it? Leading to further thinking, thought. That's why we say thought provoking. Okay. The pictorial representation we all understand is, as we call it, the data visualization. We have done those things in pandas also. And there are certain terms here which we have to understand and see that how exactly my data looks like and conveys me meaning accordingly. Now, whenever you have a lot of words to be shown and you want to see that which word is coming up more as per the frequency, so then we go for this word count chart. You can see that here the first word which strikes you is knowledge. Why? Because that's the biggest being shown to me. And why is it biggest? Because the number of people who have gone for it or have voted for it or whatever, whichever way you are actually projecting the data, is the maximum. So frequency is indicated by the size of the data. सबसे छोटा word जो होगा, that will be the least used by your user. The biggest font size will be the maximally used as per the importance or as per whatever way you are, depends upon your data actually. Okay, so that is one kind of chart you're using. Multiple types of data when you have, then you go for these kind of grid charts. They can be layered, they can be individual also. Simple bar charts too, but multiple kind of data can be used in one chart itself. So subplots we call them, and we are able to portray that in one single chart. You have multiple information being displayed. Then of course we have done the line charts. So whenever you want to show a trend over time, kind of data changing over time, right? Year wise or maybe month wise. So these kind of charts are very helpful to see the decline or the rise. That is the main thing. Whether it was stable, whether it was going up, raising, or whether it was going down. So that's an exact picture, and you get a very quick picture of it using these graphs, right? Now, my normal bar charts can be used for basic categorization, and you've got a horizontal and vertical bar, both. We have done it in pandas, if you remember. We have bar H for portraying a horizontal bar graph and normal bar function to portray the vertical bar graph. Okay, these are very commonly used. So, very useful also. Next is my pie chart. Pie chart is basically proportions. Out of 100, how much? So it is having a limitation that it has to be very much uh, concise. 100 on a percentage ke basis पर you can actually depict that. Okay. Then comes your trend between variables which are displayed using the dot variable dot chart also, which is being done using this particular category of chart. Then you have another continuous data display frequency distribution. जिसमें हम लोगों का x axis में रहता है the class interval and frequency is there in the y axis, that is using my histogram. So what exactly you want to portray, based on that you will choose your tool of visualization. Okay, and then heat map is something which is, this example has been shown to you. Various colors, the intensity of the color shows the strength of that. Okay, as and when the color ka intensity reduce ho jata hai, accordingly you want to show the rainfall or heat or cold in the climate thing. Then we use these kind of maps which we see nowadays in our uh, apps. Your meteorological department का जो app होता है, वहाँ पे we see these things. Okay, then you have this stock related information, candlestick chart we say, wherein the stock going up, going down, multiple commodities को वो show करता है, options को वो show करता है, and it is very useful for my decision making when we are talking about stock prices which you want to judge and accordingly predict something. Okay, then you have the geographical maps which displays of statistical information, how much forest area coverage, how much water coverage, how much cloud coverage, whatever you want to show, some kind of a disturbance you want to show. So all these, when being depicted through a geographical map, then I am using these map charts. So various categories are there. They may ask you that to check your understanding of these things by giving you a situation and asking you what kind of chart will you be using. So just remember these names: map chart, candlestick, heat map, histogram, your dot maps, bar chart, pie charts. So हर एक का एक specification है based on which it is being chosen, right? So and like numeric data representation के लिए ये वाले available है. then stocks के लिए ये है, geographic data के लिए ये है. So this kind of categorization we have to keep in mind. Now just read this text. In order to understand what is storytelling of data, see, movies we all see, we all understand what is a story as such. But regarding the data when I'm talking about, just read this text. I'm going to read it out for you so as to make my point what I'm trying to say here. It says that I'm going through the right side text first. An established finding in traffic safety is that vehicles should maintain speed consistent with those of neighboring vehicles. For this reason, federal agencies recommend a minimum speed of 80 kilometers per hour to be adopted by local, state, and provincial governments. Nearly all local governments have conformed to this recommendation as it promotes safety and minimizes confusion when passing from one jurisdiction to another or when merging from one land to the other. Right? So this is a very typical way of uh, portraying a message to the users or to the customers or to the citizens of a country that your minimum speed limit is of 80 kilometers per hour. Now, what is the storytelling way of doing? This is a direct method. Okay. Now, here you have a storytelling method, an example given here where they say that the story is being narrated. Okay, I'm using the word narration, I'm using the word story, that the storytelling is being used to do it. What is that now? It says a police officer pulls over a car for driving too slowly on the highway. This is a highway, you must drive at least 80 kilometers per hour. The sign is saying 20, said the driver. This is a highway route 20, not speed limit 20. The officer then sees sees the passenger is unconscious. Is everything okay? She's being like this since we turned off highway 180. Now, in this case, there is a story being narrated where a police officer is uh, talking to a passenger, and there we talk about the speed limit, the highway number, and they are trying to decipher out of it that okay, the speed limit here is my 80 kilometers per hour, right? So the way when you kind of convey this through a story, the person will listen to you more carefully. The person will listen to you more carefully. Okay, so that is why we have to be. This is another way of presenting your data to the people around you, that you give a story to it and then tell them. Okay, rather than giving them a textual data directly. It's easier for them to correlate or remember, because the story also strikes a chord with you sometimes. कि हाँ मेरे साथ भी ऐसा हुआ है. So then you remember that thing pretty well. So that is actually about data storytelling. Okay. So data storytelling has got three aspects, essential elements as we call it. Of course, the data. Check the symbol also. The symbol also has been asked once or twice in the exam that what is that symbol which represents the data. Databases में हम लोग exactly ये वाला symbol use करते हैं ना, the cylindrical figure, in order to talk about the data. Then you have the visual. The visual is this one, which is showing you the graph, the pie chart, a sliced pie chart. And then is the narrative. Narrative में इन्होंने इसको एक ink, a book with an ink pen being shown that it's being written. So that's the third aspect of the element of the data storytelling, which is my narration. We all talk about data. We all convey data to your friends, to your relatives, to your parents, to your in your day-to-day life. You convey data. It is just information. Okay, organized information, organized set of data is what is called as information. So you convey information to everybody around you. Okay. Second thing is that data when accompanied with visuals, which is what I have shown you initially, the graphs and the charts and the diagrams, by which you are easily able to visualize in your mind the trends and the patterns. Okay. So that adds to the narrative. And then you talk about the narrative. That is एक engaging manner में, एक clear, effective, yet a story manner में, humorous manner में, you convey that information जो तुमको convey करना है. Because that is something which the person sitting in front of you will remember more, will retain more. And that is the focus of this data storytelling that the data being very, very monotonous, huge, I need to just derive the insight out of it. कि एक पिछले एक महीने में जो sales हुआ है, जो पिछले एक महीने में feedbacks आए, जो पिछले एक महीने में जो भी हुआ in the company, I want to draw a significant insight to it. Okay. Now, when I want to do that, I have this kind of a data storytelling method, which will help me do it in a manner that the retention of the data will be more, the understanding will be more, and decision making will be faster. Okay. So the elements of data storytelling is these three: data, visual, and ultimately having a good narration. Now you may have data and visuals. We've been studying about this that visuals को include करो data के साथ. जितना ज़्यादा diagram दोगे, when we make presentations, we always say that it will help you to retain. But even along with that, if you add a narration which is very, very engaging, then the insight to it is actually, the understanding to the data is actually better, much better than the simple one. Okay. So the culmination of, or the interlinking the whole thing together, when you combine the right visuals and the narrative with the right data, you create a story that can influence and drive a change. So we see that nowadays, I am talking about the data being shown in Instagram, or I mean through Instagram, Facebook, shorts, the ones which are very, very engaging, small, short, crisp, but conveys the message quickly, right? Uh, is what we retain at times, the maximum. Fine. So that is what makes a real impact. देखो, retain is something जो कि शायद वो हम लोग चीजें retain नहीं करते हैं जो daily use में नहीं आता है इतना. But here I'm not talking about the shots we are viewing. We are talking about in terms of a company which is trying to use the concept of AI in order to get a better insight into my data for better decision. Jैसे 6 महीने में क्या हुआ है, and now I'm planning for the next 6 months. So how should I proceed with it? Right. So when I want to do that, I have to really take care of these particular things. That just portraying the data will be a very, very boring thing unless you add visuals, enlighten, and engaging narratives to get the best out of it. Okay, now this data storytelling with time is gaining importance because of the fact that there are so many, data, so much of data around us. पहली बात तो डेटा में से हाई क्वालिटी डेटा को निकालो. The irrelevant ones should be removed. Then is you have to put that data in a manner that you are able to convey what you want to. So visuals come in hand with that, right? Standardize karo usko, communication ko, the way you want to present it. That is something which is very, very important. And ultimately, it should be done in a meaningful manner, interesting manner, so that सुनने वाले को भी वो चीज interesting लगे, engaging लगे. He feels part of that and he is able to retain it. है ना? Because retain करेगा तभी वो उस चीज को जाके use करेगा. So if I'm talking about AI being used or this data storytelling being used for designing advertisements. Advertisements में तो क्या storytelling होता ही है. But still, if I say that betterment has to be done to that in that direction. So that is why you have to make your information memorable. That's the most important thing. If you don't make it, then the retaining of the data is not there. So that is how the tool has becoming very, very effective for the humans to experience. Now here we talk about the next aspect of my data storytelling, which is elements of a story. As such, when I talk about a story, now visuals का importance हमें समझ में आ गया. Visuals are very, very important as compared to the data which we are talking about. Only data. But when I want to add a narration to it, how should it be? एक story का basic elements क्या क्या होता है, which is going to create a story for me, a good story, right? So I have to identify the characters involved, which are the people, animals, objects, whatever you're talking about. Even if I'm talking about a story which I want to build around stocks, so my various companies involved there are my characters there. Isko leke I'm going to make a story. Maybe. Then of course the setting or the plot has to be created, which is very, very important. Like a plot is not interesting, then it will not create an impact. So the time, the location has to be very, very relevant and interesting. Okay. Then you have to create a problem which you ultimately resolve. Because the problem will actually tell the people around which who are seeing through that what are we trying to address? What are we dealing with? So the situation the characters are put into is a problem, and then you take them forward through the story. Right? कि ये problem हुआ उसके लिए हमने ऐसे सोचा ऐसे किया और हम ultimately ऐसे में आए. Right? So then that is my conflict. Third step, third element. Then comes the resolution. So you take the conflict to a camp climax, then you kind of end it, and finally you give a uh, resolution that okay, this is how it is. This is how it should have been handled. This is how it should have been done. Now, when you are doing that, what is ultimately your goal? Your goal is to develop clear, deep understanding of the complicated problem. या वो problem जो user address ही नहीं करना चाहता है. Your company manager is not ready to understand only. Is not ready to accept कि that is a problem. उसको लिए भी you can have this kind of a thing done that you develop a story around the problem. You develop a situation around the problem in such a manner that your manager is giving it a thought now कि नहीं यार ये तो हो सकता है ये तो है. It is a problem which has to be understood, which has to be solved. Right? So that is the insight which you finally create through your story. That the ability to have a clear, deep, and sudden understanding that yes, this is right. What you're trying to convey is right. And I need to have a solution, or this is the solution which I can have. Both ways. Okay. So like going further to this is a narrative which has been given for the data story to understand the elements which I've been talking about just now, that you start a story. Whenever you watch a movie also, there's a start. Okay, ये भी हो रहा है, वो भी हो रहा है, लोग आ रहे हैं, लोग जा रहे हैं. It's happening. Then suddenly you feel the pace increases. कुछ हुआ. Something happened. Right? So that's my rising action. Then धीरे 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 that things converts into a huge problem. ये भी हो गया, वो भी हो गया, something, lot of things happening. That becomes my climax. कि now तो it has to be resolved. And then the resolution starts. The process of resolution starts, and the step 4 comes in here, as we say, falling action. So dhire, 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 then the problem is being solved and ultimately resolved. So this is called as the Freytag's pyramid, wherein the elements of the data storytelling has been put again diagrammatically for you to understand and remember better. That first is the exposition, then comes the rising action, then comes the climax, then comes the falling action, and then is the resolution. Another way of representing it that you set the situation first, then you develop it. So we say rising insights. Then there's a aha moment. Oh, okay, fine, samajh aa gaya. And then you have solutions to it. What next should be done? What more can be done in this? जिसमें कि आप ऑडियंस के भी अंडरस्टैंडिंग को रेफर करते हो, ऑडियंस के अंडरस्टैंडिंग को फर्दर ले जाते हो, so that he is able to design the best solution for the problem. Okay, so when you want to create a story through your data, elements we have understood how it should be done. Now we have to see steps. When you are doing it typically for a data thing, because the pyramid what we talk about also talks about a situation which is a normal movie storytelling also. So really we are not talking about that. We want a data storytelling being done. So iske step 1 way we say collect the data and organize it. Of course, first thing first is अगर आपको sales के ऊपर कुछ काम करना है, you want to develop a data, I mean a story, you have to first collect the data. Various areas से आप अपना sales का data collect करो, various products का sales का data collect करो, सब जगह से collect करो, year wise collect करो, season wise collect करो, month wise collect करो, festival wise collect करो, सब कुछ करो. फिर उसको ऑर्गेनाइज करो, एज आई एम सेइंग, रैंडमली कलेक्ट करो, फिर उसको ऑर्गेनाइज करो एज यू वांट टू प्रेजेंट इट। देन यू वांट टू मूव ऑन टू कि इस पर्टिकुलर डेटा को विच काइंड ऑफ विजुअलाइजेशन टूल शुड आई बी यूजिंग। I should be using a pie chart, I should be using a histogram, I should be using a bar chart, I should be using a geographical chart. What kind of a visualization tool I should be using? I do that. I select it and I apply that. Okay. जब आप उसको visualize करेंगे, then you will be able to observe some relationships within the data. You may not use a single tool, you may use multiple tools for that matter. And then you kind of develop or observe a relationship between the data. ठीक है, जब आप उस स्टेज पे पहुंच जाएंगे, देन यू स्टार्ट थिंकिंग अबाउट द नैरेटिव कि अब मुझे इस चीज को प्रेजेंट करने के लिए व्हाट काइंड ऑफ नैरेटिव आई शुड बी यूजिंग, विच इज इफेक्टिव, विच इज मेमोरेबल, विच इज इंटरेस्टिंग, विच इज मेकिंग द पीपल थिंक, राइट? सो दैट is something which we go step by step to create a data story. Now let's take up an example for this. We've understood, okay, we've understood what exactly is happening. Let's take up an example for that. So this is my textual data, tabular data of COVID, wherein I'm trying to say that every 15 days, the deaths happening in people who are not vaccinated and deaths happening within the people who are vaccinated. Okay. So as we have started up this data from October 1, 2020, and like 15th October को कैसा था, 31st October को कैसा था, November 1st को कैसा था. So as and when your count of vaccinations are increasing, how exactly it is affecting the death toll. That is what is my data here up to January 31st, 2021, almost 6 months. Right? Every 15 days we have got this data. Now when we try to got the data, we've organized it also. हम लोगों ने वो सारे काउंट्स रेडी करे और उसको इस टैबुलर स्ट्रक्चर में रेडी कराया. So my first step is complete. Collecting and organizing. Moving on to the next step is that I have to select a visualization tool, which is my graph. So what kind of graph will I be using? Where you have to show a trend, right? Line graphs are excellent for that. So wherever you have to show a trend happening, the line graphs are very good. So we have chosen the line graph here, and now I project the data. When I project the data, I am conveying a message through this. I use colors for that. I use my legends to explain those colors. And I'm saying here that from the start, from the start till the end, my data looks like this on the visualization tool. That is on my graph, it is looking like this. That's my second step. मैंने उस डेटा को लिया, प्रिपेयर करा, उसके बाद मैंने उसको विजुअलाइजेशन टूल सिलेक्ट करा, उसके बाद मैंने उसको प्रोजेक्ट करके. Second step also done. Now I come to the third step. In the third step, now I'm trying to kind of find a, conclusion. ठीक है, अब क्या? So I see here that initially the death toll was same, but as and when the vaccination increased, the deaths with the vaccination reduced or remained almost similar, and the deaths without the vaccination increased many folds. Right? So आपका जो नरेशन इसके साथ चलेगा, उसके साथ ये चलेगा that you have to develop a story or convey the message that vaccination gives a ray of hope here. So you should be conveying this thing to your people that be convinced to take the vaccination. Why? Because this is how the data is projecting. And it is giving me a ray of hope that yes, if you are going for vaccination, the death toll is decreasing and hence vaccination is helpful. Okay. So the narrative goes around this thing that vaccination is giving me a ray of hope. I can save my life. So आप इसके अराउंड नैरेटिव को तैयार करो, आप इसके अराउंड स्टोरी तैयार करो, that this is the final narration conclusion. Okay. So that is what is the main understanding of this data storytelling, which we are talking about. Now, we've been using two terms simultaneously, visualization and storytelling. Visualization and storytelling. How are they correlated? How are they interlinked? Let's talk about that too. कि data visualization और data storytelling में कहाँ पे Similarity है, कहाँ पे dissimilarity है? Okay. So we may say that data storytelling is the overall process where you are starting from picking the data to the narration. Okay, and inspiring people to take action. The resolution tak pura ka pura is my data storytelling. The whole process. Visualization is just one part of it. Without the visualization, I will not be able to have my data storytelling done well because it's required to have the visualization also as part of it. But it's not the complete thing, right? So visualization too. See, this is where an AI professional maybe comes in contact with a humanities person, a psychology study kiya hua person. That is why we say that now we are having the domains interlinked. डेटा लिया, ऑर्गेनाइज करा, उसमें से नॉन वैल्यूज हटाए, उसको रेडी किया, प्रेप किया और विजुअलाइज करा दिया. ये एक प्रोग्रामर, एक एआई इंडिविजुअल फटाफट करेगा, राइट? बट देन हाउ टू हैव दैट डेटा इन अ स्टोरी, द नरेशन, इसके लिए उस बंदे का क्रिएटिव होना, इसके लिए उस बंदे में वो चीज होना कि उसको वो उसका एक्सपीरियंस विच विल लीड टू अ सिचुएशन वेयर इन यू विल बी एबल टू convey the message very, very properly. What is the message which I want to convey? Right? So that is what is happening in my data storytelling, and that is what is where my science and humanities is coming into play together. That is what is happening nowadays. We are saying that an engineer has to have some aspect of humanities also, psychology also. कि वो people का psychology समझते हुए narrative तैयार करो. And the narration might change if you are doing your narration in villages. If you are doing your narration in cities, your narration will change. Okay? If you are doing it for children, if you are doing it for elders, if you are doing it for middle-aged, if you are doing it for drug addicts, your narration will change. ठीक है? Data वही है, visualization हम वही करेंगे, visualization को हम change नहीं करेंगे, but your narration will change as per the situation, as per the people, as per the audience to whom you are targeting, right? So that is where you may link your visualization and storytelling together. Visualization and storytelling together. Okay. Now, of course, ethics comes into play because it is there everywhere. It is there everywhere. Now, again, for data storytelling also, my ethics becomes very, very important because ultimately आप क्या कर रहे हो? आप डेटा पे काम कर रहे हो. और डेटा कहाँ से आया? डेटा आपने कहीं ना कहीं से पिक किया. और कहाँ से पिक किया? जहां से पिक किया क्या वो एक्यूरेट है? जहां से पिक किया क्या वो उनको पता है दैट इज देयर डेटा इज बीइंग यूज्ड फॉर नरेशन लेटर. Data will be used for further usage. Are you telling them that? So that transparency should be there. You should clearly cite the sources of the data also. That is very much important. You have to tell them the methods being used for analysis. If there are any bias is a very important aspect. That data should not have the bias. Okay, that we have studied earlier also, that bias is something which spoils the whole narrations. Spoils the whole resolution. The message which had to be conveyed is lost because the data itself was biased. The data being conveyed was biased. So it is not conveying the right picture. Okay. And the last point which we talk about is of course, respect for privacy. If you are taking the data from individuals or groups and sharing it, it should not be personal or sensitive information without their knowledge. Somebody who is agreeing to share with you, please do that. Otherwise, don't pick up that data for sharing. That is against the ethics, right? So accuracy, transparency, respect for privacy. These are my pointers for my ethics. Okay, so just going through it once more so that I can summarize it for you again. When I talk about data storytelling, I'm really talking about presenting the data, of course, through visual tools, of course, but adding a narration to it also so that the memorability of the data increases, so that the understanding of data increases, so that the thought-provoking intention of the data increases. Okay, the user feels part of the data and he is able to take a decision which is going to be more effective and reliable for the user, right? Various visual types which you have to keep in mind is that for textual data, we use word cloud kind of graphs. For mixed data, we use face and grid. That's one example. You may have many. Then for trends, numerical data में जब हमको trends show करना है, data changing over time, then live graph is very, very important. For two categories where you want to compare two categories, sales with income or anything for that matter, then you go for the bar charts. Okay? Proportion जब भी दिखाना है, out of 100 जब भी दिखाना है, then pie charts come handy. Then you talk about the next part. I'm sorry. I stop the share. I'm very sorry. Okay. So next part, what we have here is the scatter plot. In the case of scatter plot, we are visualizing the relationship and the trends between two variables. Again, this is also effective in certain cases wherein performance have to be judged. Then comes your histogram. This is very, very typically meant for my frequency charts. So x-axis may you'll have the class interval and y-axis may you'll have the frequency. Then you have this kind of heat map. The name of the chart itself is heat map here. So यहाँ पे हम लोग color के through, intensity of color के through data को represent करते हैं. Okay. Then for stocks, we have this candlestick chart, which shows multiple things through one candle also. And that is something which is very much helpful for stock trading. And geographic charts will be using for every aspect wherever the map is required. Okay. So here is an example where we discussed that a story is always conveying the messages better because it's more engaging. That's the only thing. So three aspects of it, three elements of the data storytelling is data, visual and narrative. Data और visual पे अभी तक हम हमेशा काम करते आए हैं. Narrative aspect, I am asking you to add in your further ventures maybe. Okay. And they should be linked. अब narration भी ऐसा नहीं हो जाना चाहिए जो कि it takes them to the world where you are not able to link the data. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए. वो कुछ और ही बताता हुआ चला के, है ना? It should be enlightening in the right direction. That is very, very important. Okay. Then are these, characters which are, the elements of the story which are there. And इसको represent करने के लिए the pyramid is very, very effective, I think. Because that tells you the basic elements, कैसे वो और किसका कितना importance है. किसका कितना importance है. Right? So that is what we do through that pyramid. Next, we have the steps. Steps are important. They can ask you. And we have to also understand because steps will tell you the main importance. That's how we are correlating all the aspects of it. So collection of the data will include your ethics aspect. जो हमने discuss किया कि it should not be sensitive information. It should not be information without the consent of the person जिसका data आप उठा रहे हो, जिस भी company का data उठा रहे हो, जिस भी user का data उठा रहे हो. It should not be sensitive information which can create problems. When you collect the data should be not on the biased category, on the biased side. Okay, so it should not be biased data. It's very, very important. Then you organize it